Hello, my name is Barbara Ramirez. I am 22 years old and I'm studying journalism at the University of New Mexico with a minor in political science. I am from Venezuela, so that's where my accent is from. And I have been living in Albuquerque, New Mexico since 2016. I attended Sandia High School, then I went to CNM for my associate's degree, and then I transferred to UNM to complete my bachelor's. Today, I am going to talk about the empirical study assignment that we got for this nonverbal communication class. And I found an article that is titled Creating Your Bubble, Personal Space on and Around Public Displays. And it is an empirical study that I chose to do an analysis for. So when I was doing the research for this assignment, I knew that I wanted to focus on proxemics because I am from Venezuela and I really had cultural shock when I arrived and I realized that the personal space norms here in New Mexico and in the United States in general are very different from the ones in my country, where we're really used to like physical touch and having like shorter personal space distances. So I know I wanted to do proxemics and I wanted to focus on proxemics across cultures or in different parts of the world. However, I wasn't finding the empirical studies that I needed and that met the criteria for the assignment. So I ended up selecting this one on large public displays. So a little bit about the research study. In this study, in the essay, the researchers describe an empirical study that explores how users establish and use personal space around large public displays, or LPDs, and their study complements field studies in this space by more fully characterizing interpersonal distances based on coupling and confirms the use of on-screen territories on vertical displays. So that's like the very academic abstract or summary. And I have my citation right here. So what was this study about? They had 20 participants. They randomly recruited 20 STEM students for this study, 11 men and 9 women between the ages of 19 and 42 years old. And they were randomly paired to do an activity. And so for this activity, they were gonna be monitored and like they had different measurements to see how close to each other they got when completing this activity. So they were doing a jigsaw puzzle and they had 5 degrees of collaboration. The first degree was the simple, and that meant that the two individuals were working on a 25-piece puzzle individually. They each had their pieces and they were working on them individually. Then they had mix 5, which means they were still working individually, but they swapped 5 pieces so that they had to reach for the pieces or pass them to each other to be able to complete it. And then they had mix 10, which is the same, but with 10 pieces that were swapped. Then they had the duplicate, which for the duplicate, what they did was that um, the participants had to solve copies of the same puzzle and 10 pieces from each puzzle were swapped. So it was a little bit more complicated and required more like personal space and all of that. And then the shared is just one large puzzle that they had to work on together. So this is a really great image that they included in the research study. It shows participants working individually on their puzzles. This is the simple um, degree of collaboration. And then B and C, we see that they're getting closer to each other, reaching, We can really see here on B where we have the man going to the other side to grab the piece that he needs. It doesn't specify which degree of collaboration each of them are working on. So that's like my critique on the image, because when I was reading this really complicated academic paper, I wanted to have like a visual idea of what this looked like. So I think it would have helped if they included which degree of collaboration they're working on. And then for the results and findings, they concluded that by maintaining physical proximity, users are able to better maintain awareness of one another's actions and more easily communicate as they complete shared tasks. So the closer they were, the better communication that existed, and so it helped them complete the task in a more efficient manner. And then the second finding was that individual puzzle trials took less time to complete than shared puzzle trials, where participants had to collaborate and work in a collectivistic way. They had to share with each other and help each other out. And then the third finding that I selected was that, as the researchers expected, the participants completing shared puzzle trials stood closer to each other than those completing individual trials. And lastly, I just want to say thank you for listening to my presentation. I had fun reading the article. I had to read it like 7 times because some of the terminology that they use is complicated, because this is a serious empirical study. And the names of the authors, I want to mention them: James Wallace, Nancy Iskander, and Edward Long. And they're all scholars at the University of Waterloo in Canada. Thank you again for listening, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say.